Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Irfana Hafeez, and today I'll be presenting my doctoral study titled An Investigation of English Teachers' Self-Reported Efficacy Beliefs in Saudi Public University's Preparatory Program. This is me. So before I begin, I would like to introduce myself briefly. I am a PhD graduate in education specialized in TESOL from the University of Exeter. I have worked in Saudi higher education for over 10 years, where my role was to serve as an English language trainer as well as fulfilling coordination duties for language structures and drills. My academic interests are basically teacher self-efficacy belief, curriculum development. Also, I'm interested into integration of digital tools, and currently I'm working on how to use AI in English language classes. Moving on to my study, I would like to briefly talk about what is teacher self-efficacy. So, teacher self-efficacy, in simple word, it means teachers' confidence in their ability to plan, teach, and adapt their lessons to students so they can learn well. But it is all about how much they have faith in themselves, especially when there are different challenges. In Saudi universities, this becomes especially relevant because English programs are influenced by institutional, cultural, and policy changes. In preparatory year programs, teachers work in changing environments shaped by student needs, professional development opportunities, and workplace culture. So all these factors, they affect on the teacher's teaching capabilities. Some of the factors which led to this research are based on my professional observation, which are, you can see, maladministration, bureaucracy, peer pressure, institutional policies. Also, another thing which I observed while working, I observed that teachers intend to relocate, but for certain reasons they couldn't. Also, another reason that affected teacher self-efficacy was lack of professional development opportunities that had an impact on their self-efficacy, and also on their mental and physical well-being. So this is just the background which led me to explore the concept of self-efficacy in the context of English language teachers in the at higher education level. Now, next, I would like to begin my literature review by first explaining the concept of self-efficacy in a bit more details because it forms the theoretical foundation of my study. The concept of self-efficacy was first introduced by Albert Bandura. He is the main name behind this construct, and this construct was within the social cognitive theory. According to Bandura, self-efficacy believes to an individual's belief in their ability to organize and execute the actions required to manage prospective situation. In simple words, self-efficacy is not about the skills people actually have, but rather what they believe, what they can do with those skills, and especially when they have different difficult scenarios. Bandura emphasized that beliefs influence how people think, how they feel, how they motivate themselves, and the ultimate thing is how do they behave. By behave, he meant that how do they respond towards that situation. Also, the theory of self-efficacy by Albert Bandura, it also explains that people who have high self-efficacy are more likely to have challenging task, but they persist in the face of difficulties, and they quickly recover from the setbacks, which is, again, I would say, based on my experience, is something which is intrinsic. In contrast, those with low self-efficacy may avoid difficult tasks and doubt their capabilities even when they possess the necessary skill. Now let's move on to another part of Bandora's self-efficacy belief system. Bandora explains that our behavior is shaped through three factors, which he called triadic reciprocal causation. By that, he means that personal factors such as beliefs and cognition, behavior, and environmental influences. This means that they influence each other. For example, a teacher's beliefs affect their teaching behavior, which then influences the classroom environment, and then the environment in turn shapes the teacher's belief. This model helps us understand that behavior is not determined by a single factor. There are other factors also, and those factors they have dynamic interaction, and they depend on each other. Also, to make it short, to make it more clear, it's all a person's faith system, person's belief system. So how do they respond to it? That is what makes the difference. Another very important part, which is about the study, because one of my questions is based on that is 4 sources of self-efficacy. So Bandura, he identified 4 main sources. As you can see, the first one, mastery experiences, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, and physiological and emotional states. These sources collectively shape how individuals develop confidence in their abilities over time. And it is particularly important in educational contexts because, as I said earlier, the teacher's beliefs about their own effectiveness can significantly influence instructional practices as well as student outcomes. So as we proceed further, I will be talking about these 4 sources of self-efficacy and how the participants of the study they shared their experience about them. Now, I will move on to the study and I'll be sharing information about the context, the gap, the purpose of the study. So, in a country like Saudi Arabia, especially within preparatory years program, English teaching has developed over time, and these programs were created to help students strengthen their English before starting their actual university studies. However, these programs, they face different challenges, and these include differences in maybe student proficiency, low motivation in some cases, maybe curriculum demands, and the pressure of working in changing institutional environments. This is the background of this study. In terms of the gap, I think the main reason was to understand how teacher self-efficacy concepts connects to its sources, the factors, and to explore the relationship, what shapes teachers' confidence and how confidence develops over time. And the purpose of this study is to investigate English language teachers' self-efficacy beliefs in 2 universities within the preparatory year program. It examined the factors that affected teacher self-efficacy. It explored 4 sources of self-efficacy. How did they influence teacher self-efficacy? And also towards the end, I will be sharing that which one was the most dominating construct. Now, these are based on this context. The study is guided by a following research question. So, the first one is about the perceived self efficacy beliefs of English language teachers in different contextual studies. The second one is about what were the key factors that have influenced teachers' self efficacy. And the last one was about, as I mentioned earlier, also the influence of 4 sources of self efficacy of English language teachers. Now, moving on to the methodology, I will outline the research design and participants. First of all, it's a qualitative exploratory research. It is done under interpretive paradigm, and semi-structured individual interviews were conducted. Let's move forward to the details of the participants. This research was conducted across 2 public universities, which I would be referring as University A and University B. The participants included English language teachers with varied educational backgrounds and teaching experience. Also, the qualification. As you can see, I have variety. My participants were PhD, masters, and bachelors. It was convenience. It was purposive and convenience sampling strategy. You would see that the PhD, and 3 of them in PhD, masters, and bachelors, there was a variety in terms of the gender. You would see that from University A, 2 males were PhDs. From University B, 2 females were PhDs. In masters, you can see 1 male from University A and 3 from University B. Similarly, for females, there were 3 female participants from University B. In terms of bachelors, there was, in the entire population, there was only 1 bachelor's participant, which was a female. Now I'm going to introduce the background and the experience of the participants in this study. You can see from the pictures, they were from different countries. So diversity was purposely kept in order to get better understanding of the topic. So you would see the teachers were from Egypt, Saudi, Pakistan, UAE, Sudan, Canada, Kenya, Kenyan British, then United States, UK. And these teachers, they taught, some taught at university, some taught at in their prior experience, and some taught in training center in schools, and some just in university. So each participant had different experience. Now, moving on to the results, I found 3 main themes in the data. I'll briefly go through each theme and explain what it means. But basically, these are the 3 main themes. Theme number 1, perceived self-efficacy of English teachers. Theme 2, factors impacting on self-efficacy of English teachers. And theme 3, impact of 4 sources of self-efficacy of English language teachers. Now I'm going to elaborate further about these results. So the first theme that concerns perceived self-efficacy, many participants, they describe themselves as highly confident, resilient, and strongly motivated. They had one of even the participants, she mentioned that she's 100% confident about herself, and she thinks she has 100% grip over her sense of self-efficacy. So their response suggests that self-efficacy is not only about skill, but also about personality, their belief system, and also their ability to identify as well as overcome the challenges. Teacher also highlighted about the environment that influenced them, which was the classroom environment, administrative policies, and instructional strategies on their confidence. This part of the finding is basically rotating around triadic reciprocal causation, which was discussed earlier by Albert Bandura. Now, the third finding is about the factors which impact on the self-efficacy. So there are two factors. The main two factors which I laid out of it is enhancement factors that affects EFL teachers' self-efficacy beliefs, and the second one I extracted from this whole study was impediments in EFL teacher self-efficacy beliefs. So participant identified several enhancers, including appreciation, professional recognition, motivation, positive feedback. At the same time, they reported barriers such as bureaucracy, enforced guidelines, nationality-based discrimination, toxic work environments, and limited professional environment opportunities. These factors show that teacher efficacy is deeply connected to the broader institutional climate. So, moving on to my last theme of this study is the impact of four sources of self-efficacy on English language teachers. Mastery experience emerged as the most influential source, followed by vicarious experiences and verbal persuasion. Emotional and psychological states also played a role, but participants generally saw direct teaching experience as the strongest driver of confidence and professional life. So, moving on to the most important part of the study is the discussion section. These findings, they suggest that teachers' beliefs are closely linked to intrinsic motivation and strong personal belief systems. So teachers who saw themselves are capable were more likely to persist, adapt, and improve their practice. They use the words about their self-efficacy such as strong mind, high-level confidence. So they reflected that they were fully confident in themselves. At the same time, institutional environment, it also came up as an important part, and institutional environment played a major role. Positive settings supported student-centered teaching, while restrictive context, it weakened teachers' sense of agency. And moving on, this research also shows that your work environment doesn't just affect your mood. It directly impacts your belief in your own teaching abilities. So we are now going to break down about how autonomy, institutional policies, cultural context, and workplace dynamics, they shape teacher self-efficacy, and what that means for educators around the world. So work environment isn't simply good or bad. It can be both. It could be a facilitator or a challenge simultaneously. Now consider two universities. As I mentioned before, a positive environment, it helped teachers shift from a lecture-based to student-centered teaching, and they had a positive experience. The culture supported experimentation and growth at University B. So it acted as a facilitator and a challenge because there were ups and downs with their self-efficacy. Some policies, they supported growth, and others policies, it created barriers. So I would not say most were, or I can say that most workplaces are mixed, but in this case, one of the university, they had a positive, supportive, and environment which was facilitating the English language teachers, whereas the other one, it was a mix. But when when the teachers were not supported, it really frustrated them, and they felt themselves cornered. So as you can also see that in teachers' voice and empowerment, 70% of the teachers say autonomy is essential. And it's a striking finding because 70% of the teachers, they in recent studies, they have outlined that autonomy over materials, activities, and assessment is critical to feeling effective in the classroom. Also, you would say that teachers, they believe that they should not be excluded from decision making and planning because it directly hits their self-efficacy. And if it is prolonged for a long time, they call it deprofessionalization. It is a gradual erosion of skill, motivation, and effectiveness. So they work there because of their personal reasons or the social needs, but it affects their self-efficacy. Also, the third thing, which is very important, is the culture. I would say that studies in Saudi settings, it shows that a lack of cultural orientation, it negatively affects on teachers' belief system, expatriate teachers in particular, because they face unique adaptation challenges. So it is very important for the institute to guide them and to make them familiar with the context where they are working. For example, Al Arabia, he reported in 2013 that the relaxed attitude towards punctuality in Saudi culture, it posed real adjustment difficulties for teachers coming from different cultural backgrounds. So this isn't about, I would say, right or wrong, but I would say it's more towards preparation side. So if the teachers are aware of the culture aspects, it would really help them to perform well. So when institutes, they fail to provide cultural orientation, teachers enter classroom already at a disadvantage in confidence and adaptability. Therefore, based on the findings of the study, I would say that teachers should be culturally trained. Teachers should have autonomy. They should be involved in the decision making and policy making scenarios. Now, the last part of my first finding is about top-down policies. So you will see on this slide that it shows the relationship between institutional policies, teacher autonomy, and self-efficacy. But here you would see the impact of top-down policies on teacher self-efficacy as they receive from the institute and they have to implement regardless of it fit-ins with the students' learning objectives or not. So research also shows that when teachers are required to follow strict pacing guides and prescribed syllabus, they often have limited flexibility to respond to student needs. One of the studies, it also found that teacher input can negatively affect teacher self-efficacy when the policies are imposed on them. They lack the motivation to perform well. Similarly, excessive bureaucracy can leave teachers feeling powerless in instructional decision making. Therefore, supporting teacher autonomy is essential because it enables them to exercise professional judgment and it helps them to maintain strong and positive self-efficacy belief. Now, I would also like to draw attention to these two universities, which I mentioned earlier also, but I would like to highlight them over here also. In one setting, teachers, they reported hope, optimism, dedication, and strong support by institutional encouragement. Whereas in the other one, they describe restrictions, pressure, frustration. This contrast illustrates how policy implementation and workplace culture can either strengthen or undermine the self-efficacy. Now, moving on to the second theme, I will be discussing about the factors that strengthen or weakens teacher self-efficacy. In terms of the factors that strengthen the teacher self-efficacy, these include institutional appreciation, leadership support, opportunities for career growth, and professional development. Teachers feel valued and supported, and they are more likely to develop confidence, commitment, and it develops a sense of professional purpose. On the other hand, when there is nationality based discrimination, job insecurity, or if there is a strong and stressful supervisor, and also the unfair role changes, it weakens their self efficacy. These conditions reduce self respect, and it created uncertainty. So the participants expressed it that when they were discriminated based on their nationality, or when the supervisor was very controlling, they lost interest. They got demotivated, but also it was affecting their self-respect, their belief system. So these findings suggest that fair treatment, inclusion, and supportive leadership are essential for sustaining teacher confidence. Overall, I would say that the role of institute leadership and management is very important. Now let's move on to the last finding of this study, which is about the 4 sources of self-efficacy. This study, based on the participant views on these 4 variables, mastery experience emerged as the most powerful source of self-efficacy. Teachers expressed that direct classroom experience, it shaped their belief system and it had a positive impact on their ability than the indirect support alone. Vicarious experiences and verbal persuasion, they also emerged, but they were not as significantly affecting teacher self-efficacy as mastery experiences. Now, as with any study, there are limitations. So in this study, my limitations were that some participants were reluctant to share openly, which may have affected the depth of the study. Also, one very important thing that I would like to add here is most of the participants were not aware of the construct of self-efficacy. Although prior to the interview, I had discussed with them, I explained them from a PowerPoint and I shared videos with them that what is self-efficacy, but still I think that there should be professional development opportunity workshops about this construct. So it was one of the limitation of my study. Another limitation was waiting for confirmation of ethical approval. One of the reasons is that it was taking longer than expected, and another limitation because of ethical approval getting delayed and a lot of formalities were involved. So the plan from individual interviews as well as focus group interviews, it was changed. So, and the number of participants were more than 12, but due to ethical approval issue, it was reduced. And now the implications. The findings have very important implications for teacher education, institutional leadership, and policy making. I think training programs should include workshops and seminars focused on self-efficacy development. Policymakers should align institutional policies with teachers' actual classroom realities and professional voices. It is very important that teachers' voice should be part of the decision. Now, moving on to the last part of our presentation is suggestion for further research. Based on my experience while conducting this research, I would say that longitudinal research would be helpful to critically evaluate the belief system of English language teachers, one can thoroughly explore how this teacher self-efficacy is affected positively as well as negatively. Also, extensive phenomenological research on self-efficacy could be conducted. And lastly, as I mentioned before, in my limitations due to ethical approval, I had to reduce my sample size. So a larger sample size, and I would suggest that with mixed method approach, it would help to explore this topic at a very broad level. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and this is all about it. Thank you.